The archaeologist's hands trembled as she brushed away millennia of dust from the crystalline surface. Dr. Sarah Chun had spent 15 years excavating ruins across the Andromeda Spiral, but nothing had prepared her for this discovery on the forgotten world of Kepler 442b. The chamber stretched beyond the reach of her plasma lights, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and dance when viewed directly. At the center sat a massive crystalline structure, perfectly preserved despite the estimated age of 50,000 years. The readings from her scanner made no sense. The technology embedded within the crystal showed energy signatures that surpassed anything in the current galactic database. "Command, this is Chun. You need to see this immediately," she whispered into her communicator, her voice barely audible in the vast silence of the underground complex. The response crackled through static. "Dr. Chun, we're reading massive energy spikes from your location. What's your status?" Sarah's breath fogged in the suddenly warming air. The crystal had begun to glow with an internal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Ancient mechanisms hidden within the walls hummed to life after eons of dormancy. She stumbled backward as holographic displays materialized around her, showing star maps of a galaxy she barely recognized. "The structure is activating," she reported, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "I think I found something that predates all known civilizations." What she didn't realize was that her discovery would soon reveal the most shocking truth in galactic history. Humanity wasn't the young, naive species that the galactic community believed them to be. They were the returning inheritors of an empire that had once spanned the entire known universe. The Zephyrian Council had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years, their crystalline cities floating majestically above the clouds of gas giants throughout the spiral arms. Their technology was considered the pinnacle of achievement, their wisdom unquestionable, their authority absolute. When humans had first made contact just 2 centuries ago, the Zephyrians had welcomed them as they did all new species, with condescending patience and carefully controlled integration into the lower levels of galactic society. Ambassador Kethvar stood before the great viewing portal of the council chamber, his elongated form casting sharp shadows across the polished floor. His species had evolved from silicon-based organisms, giving them natural crystalline formations along their spines that glowed with their emotional states. Right now, those formations pulsed with deep blue concern. "The human archaeological expedition has discovered something on Kepler 442b, reported his aide, a younger Zephyrian whose crystals flickered with nervous yellow light. "Our long-range sensors detected a massive energy signature from the planet's surface." Kethvar's crystals dimmed to a darker blue. Kepler 442b was listed in the restricted archives as a dead world, quarantined for reasons that even he, as a senior council member, was not fully aware of. The record spoke vaguely of previous inhabitants and archive technologies, but nothing specific. "Have we made contact with the human expedition?" "Negative, sir. They went silent approximately 6 hours ago." The ambassador's crystals flashed red with alarm. In 12,000 years of galactic stewardship, the Zephyrians had learned to fear the unexpected. Order and control had brought peace to billions of worlds, and anything that threatened that stability was dealt with swiftly and decisively. "Assemble a containment fleet," he ordered. "Whatever the humans have found, it cannot be allowed to disrupt galactic stability." Deep within the activated chamber on Kepler 442b, Dr. Chin watched in amazement as the holographic displays continued to unfold around her. The technology was responding to her presence, somehow recognizing her as human despite being created tens of thousands of years before her species had supposedly achieved spaceflight. The central crystal pulsed brighter, and, suddenly, the chamber was filled with a voice that seemed to speak directly into her mind. The language was ancient, yet somehow she understood every word. "Welcome home, daughter of Earth," the voice said, warm with recognition and tinged with sadness. "You have been gone for so very long." Images flooded the holographic displays. Vast human fleets traveling between the stars, massive construction projects that reshaped entire solar systems, peaceful first contacts with dozens of species that Sarah recognized as the current dominant powers of the galaxy. But, in these ancient records, those powerful civilizations appeared primitive and grateful, looking up at humanity with reverence rather than condescension. "This cannot be real," Sarah whispered. But even as she spoke, she felt the truth of it settling into her bones. The records were too detailed, too consistent, too technologically advanced to be fabrications. The voice continued, patient and understanding. "Your people chose to sleep, dear one. The Great War was ending, and humanity was tired. So very tired of being the guardians, the protectors, the ones who bore the weight of galactic civilization. You chose to withdraw, to slumber in hidden places, and let the children you had raised take their turn at leadership." More images flashed, human colonies being gradually abandoned, vast installations being sealed and hidden, entire fleets departing for unknown destinations. But most shocking of all were the records showing human scientists working to suppress their own people's memories, allowing Earth to regress technologically while they waited for the right time to return. "But now the galaxy needs its guardians again," the voice said, and Sarah could hear urgency creeping in. "The children have grown proud and forgotten their lessons. They have become complacent, stagnant, and new threats are approaching that they do not understand." Sarah's scanner erupted with new readings as systems throughout the chamber came online. She watched in awe as weapons systems, defense networks, and communication arrays that spanned across multiple star systems began awakening from their ancient slumber. The scope of the technology was breathtaking and terrifying. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" she asked the empty air, though she somehow knew the ancient intelligence could hear her. "You must choose," came the reply. "Humanity can remain as it is, a young species learning its place in a galaxy ruled by others. Or you can reclaim your birthright and guide the galaxy through the darkness that is coming. But know this, if you choose to wake your people's true legacy, nothing in the galaxy will ever be the same again." Sarah's hands shook as she reached toward the central crystal. Around her, the chamber hummed with power that could reshape civilizations or destroy them entirely. In her choice lay the fate of not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy. She thought of Earth, of the billions of humans who had no idea of their true history. She thought of the condescending alien governments who treated humanity like eager children. And she thought of the ancient voice speaking of coming darkness and the galaxy's need for guardians. Her hand touched the crystal's surface. The galaxy began to change. Across human space, long-dormant installations buried deep beneath the surfaces of colonies began to stir. Ancient defensive systems that had slept for millennia started their reactivation sequences. And, in the depths of space, massive structures that had been mistaken for natural phenomena began to move. The Zephyrian containment fleet was still 3 days away from Kepler 442b when their sensors detected the impossible. Energy signatures were appearing throughout human space, signatures that matched no known technology in their databases. The readings showed power outputs that exceeded the total energy production of entire star systems. Admiral Zekthara's crystals strobed with panic as she reviewed the incoming data. In less than 12 hours, humanity had gone from being a minor spacefaring species to displaying technological capabilities that rivaled or exceeded the galaxy's oldest civilizations. "How is this possible?" she demanded of her science officer. "Unknown, Admiral. The energy sources appear to be activating simultaneously across all human territories. Whatever technology they're using, it was hidden so well that our surveys never detected it." The Admiral's crystals flashed deep red. In 12,000 years of Zephyrian rule, no species had ever displayed such sudden technological advancement. The implications were terrifying. If humanity possessed such capabilities, what else had they been hiding? "Send a priority message to the Council," she ordered. "Tell them that the humans may represent a threat to galactic stability far beyond anything we previously imagined." On Earth, similar scenes were playing out in government facilities around the globe. Ancient bunkers that had been forgotten for millennia were opening, revealing technologies that made current human achievements look like primitive tools. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals stared in shock at holographic displays showing the true scope of their species' hidden infrastructure. Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, the Secretary General of the United Earth Government, found herself in a conference room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by technology that seemed to have materialized from science fiction. The holographic display before her showed star maps detailing defensive installations, hidden colonies, and massive automated factories that had apparently been operating in secret for thousands of years. According to these records, reported General Morrison, his face pale with shock, humanity has maintained a shadow infrastructure across hundreds of star systems. We have defensive capabilities that could protect the entire galaxy, industrial capacity that could supply 1,000 civilizations, and military assets that— He paused, swallowing hard. Military assets that could conquer the known galaxy in a matter of months. Dr. Harrison felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. What about our people? Do they know? That's the strangest part, replied Dr. Kim, the government's chief archaeologist. The records indicate that the memory suppression was voluntary. Our ancestors chose to forget, to let their children grow up believing humanity was young and naive. They wanted us to develop naturally, without the burden of our true heritage. The Secretary General stared at the displays showing humanity's true capabilities. According to the records, her species had once been the acknowledged guardians of galactic civilization, respected and feared by every sentient race in the known universe. They had voluntarily stepped back, allowed other species to take leadership roles, and hidden their true nature so completely that even they had forgotten who they really were. The question now, she said quietly, is what we do with this knowledge. The answer came from an unexpected source. The ancient AI systems that had maintained humanity's hidden infrastructure began broadcasting a message to every human world simultaneously. The voice was kind but firm, paternal yet urgent. Children of Earth, the message began. The time of forgetting is over. The galaxy faces threats that its current leaders cannot comprehend or combat. You must choose, remain as you are and watch civilizations fall, or reclaim your role as the galaxy's guardians. Across human space, the ancient installations continued their awakening. Defensive grids that could protect entire star systems came online. Manufacturing complexes began producing technologies that surpassed anything the galactic community had ever seen. And, most ominously, long-range sensors that could observe the spaces between galaxies detected movement in the cosmic void, something vast and hostile approaching from the darkness beyond the galactic rim. The Zephyrian Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The humans, who had been dismissed as a minor species barely worthy of notice, were revealing technological capabilities that challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about civilization and progress. The implications are clear, declared Council Leader Vexandra, her crystals blazing with authoritative white light. Either humanity has been deceiving us for 2 centuries, hiding technology that makes our achievements look primitive, or they have somehow gained access to capabilities that should not exist. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species voiced their own concerns. The proud dominion of Esikatar, whose military might had gone unchallenged for millennia, reported that their war fleets were being overshadowed by human installations appearing throughout contested space. The merchant princes of the Gamma Collective found their trade routes suddenly, protected by defensive systems whose existence they had never suspected. We demand an explanation, growled Ambassador Gorth of the Hegemony, his reptilian features twisted with rage. How does a species that asked our permission to settle dead worlds suddenly possess technology that makes our greatest achievements look like children's toys? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chin's archaeological expedition had finally re-established contact with the outside galaxy, and her first transmission sent shockwaves through every civilized world. To all galactic governments, her message began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. I am transmitting historical records recovered from Kepler 442b. These records document the true history of this galaxy, and humanity's role in that history. The data that followed rewrote everything the galactic community thought they knew about their own past. Ancient archives showed images of the galaxy 50,000 years ago, when humanity had first emerged from Earth with technology that seemed like magic to the primitive species they encountered. The records showed human explorers making first contact with the ancestors of every major galactic civilization, sharing knowledge, technology, and guidance that had lifted dozens of species from planetary civilizations to galactic powers. Most shocking of all were the records of the Great Compact, the agreement by which humanity had voluntarily stepped down as the galaxy's guardians, choosing to withdraw and let the species they had nurtured take responsibility for galactic civilization. The records showed human leaders, tired after millennia of bearing the burden of galactic stewardship, making the difficult decision to trust their protégés with the future. "We chose to sleep," Dr. Chin's message continued, "believing that the galaxy would be safe in your care. But now ancient systems are detecting threats that require the Guardians to wake once more." The transmission included detailed scans of the approaching entities in the cosmic void, massive structures of unknown origin that dwarfed entire star systems, moving with purpose toward the galactic rim. The technology analyzing these threats was so advanced that galactic scientists could barely understand the readings, let alone the implications. "Humanity is returning to its role not out of conquest or pride," Dr. Chun concluded, "but out of necessity. The galaxy needs its guardians again." The silence that followed her transmission was profound. Across hundreds of worlds, leaders who had thought themselves the pinnacle of galactic civilization found themselves confronted with the reality that they had been protected children all along. The species they had dismissed as naive newcomers were revealing themselves as the ancient parents who had guided galactic civilization from its earliest days. The Galactic Trade Station Omega-7 had been the crown jewel of interspecies commerce for over 3,000 years. Located at the intersection of 5 major hyperspace routes, it hosted representatives from every known civilization in the galaxy. The station's massive ring structure could accommodate ships from the smallest courier vessels to the mighty dreadnoughts of the galactic powers. Captain Reese Martinez had docked his cargo hauler at Omega-7 countless times over the past decade, always following the same routine. Human ships were assigned to the outer rim docking bays, the less prestigious areas reserved for minor species. Human traders were required to go through additional security screenings and pay higher docking fees than their alien counterparts. It was simply the way things were, and Martinez had long since stopped questioning it. Today felt different from the moment he stepped off his ship. The Zephyrian Port Authority officer who normally processed human vessels with barely concealed disdain now approached Martinez with something that looked suspiciously like nervous respect. The crystalline being's spine formations flickered with anxious yellow light as he examined Martinez's standard trade documents. "Captain Martinez," the officer said, his translated voice carefully neutral, "there have been administrative changes regarding human vessels. You are cleared for immediate priority docking in Bay Alpha 1. Martinez blinked in surprise. Bay Alpha 1 was reserved for diplomatic vessels and representatives of the Galactic Council. No human ship had ever been granted access to that section of the station. "I think there's been a mistake," he said. "I'm just hauling grain shipments from the Terran colonies." The Zephyrian's crystals flickered more rapidly. "No mistake, Captain. All human vessels are now classified as priority traffic. Your ship will be refueled and resupplied at no charge, and you have been granted full station privileges." As Martinez made his way through the station's corridors, he noticed other changes. Alien beings who would normally push past humans without acknowledgement now stepped aside respectfully. Shop vendors who had previously quoted inflated prices for human customers were offering their goods at standard rates, some even at significant discounts. In the station's central plaza, he found other human traders and travelers gathering in confused clusters, all sharing similar stories of unexpected preferential treatment. Sarah Kim, a trader from the outer colonies, grabbed his arm as he approached. "Reese, what the hell is going on? I just had a hegemony admiral apologize for keeping me waiting 5 minutes." A hegemony admiral. They usually won't even acknowledge our existence. Before Martinez could respond, the station's public announcement system activated. The voice that emerged was that of Station Administrator Velquan, a Dominion official whose species controlled the facility. "Attention all station residents and visitors. We have received priority communications from galactic leadership regarding recent revelations about human history and capabilities. All humans aboard this station are now accorded full diplomatic courtesy. Any being found showing disrespect to human citizens will face immediate sanctions. The announcement continued with technical details about new protocols, but Martinez barely heard them. Around the plaza, hundreds of alien beings were staring at the small groups of humans with expressions ranging from confusion to what looked like fear. "What revelations?" whispered Chun, a shipping coordinator from Earth. "What's he talking about?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a xenobiologist who had been conducting research on the station, came running through the plaza with her tablet displaying a galactic news feed. "You need to see this," she gasped, holding up the device. "They're saying we're not who we think we are. They're saying humans were the ancient guardians of the galaxy." The news feed showed images from Dr. Chen's archaeological discovery, ancient records depicting human fleets protecting primitive alien civilizations, and, most shocking of all, current footage of massive installations appearing throughout human space. The technology being revealed was so advanced that the galactic community's own scientists could barely analyze it. Martinez stared at the tablet in disbelief. "That's impossible. Humans only achieved interstellar flight 2 centuries ago." "Apparently not," Dr. Tanaka said, her voice shaking. "According to these records, we've been spacefaring for over 50,000 years. We just forgot somehow." Around them, the station's alien population was beginning to react to the news with increasing agitation. A group of Esikatar warriors, whose species prided itself on military supremacy, were backing away from the humans with their weapon hands twitching nervously. Merchant representatives from species that had built their wealth on advanced technology were staring at their human counterparts with growing alarm. The mood shifted from confusion to tension as the full implications of the revelations began to sink in. If humans truly possessed the advanced technology being revealed across their space, what else had they been hiding? How much of galactic civilization had been built on the foundation of forgotten human knowledge? The tension exploded when Commander Crixval of the Dominion Security Force made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the station. "All human nationals are to report to Security Station Beta for enhanced screening procedures." His voice boomed through the plaza. "Recent security concerns require immediate verification of human activities and capabilities." The announcement was met with immediate protest from the human community, but what surprised everyone was the source of the loudest objection. Ambassador Thelsera of the Consortium, whose species had a reputation for cold pragmatism, stepped forward with her diplomatic staff. "Commander Crixval, I must formally protest this action," she declared, her voice carrying the authority of galactic law. "Until the current situation is fully understood, all human nationals must be treated with full diplomatic immunity. We cannot afford to antagonize a species whose true capabilities we are only beginning to understand." The standoff that followed would have been impossible to imagine just days earlier. Alien security forces faced off against human civilians, while representatives of major galactic powers argued over the proper protocols for dealing with a species that had suddenly revealed itself to possess technology beyond their understanding. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on a much larger scale. The Zephyrian Council had called an emergency session to address what they were privately referring to as the human crisis. In the Great Chamber where they had ruled galactic affairs for 12 millennia, the crystalline beings found themselves confronting a reality that challenged everything they believed about their own authority. "The installations appearing in human space are not new constructions," reported Science Director Varthek, his crystals dim with exhaustion from analyzing the incoming data. "Our deep scans indicate they have been present for tens of thousands of years, merely dormant. The technology involved in hiding them from our sensors is beyond our current understanding." Council leader Vexandra's crystals pulsed with frustrated red light. "How many installations are we talking about?" Conservative estimates suggest thousands of major facilities across human space, with smaller installations numbering in the tens of thousands. Each major facility demonstrates power outputs that exceed our most advanced installations. The numbers were staggering. Humanity, which the Zephyrians had classified as a Level 3 civilization barely capable of interstellar colonization, was revealing infrastructure that suggested they were actually a Level 8 or possibly Level 9 civilization, categories that the galactic community had theorized but never encountered. What about their military capabilities? Asked Defense Coordinator Tech Marin. Varthek's crystals flickered with what could only be described as fear. Unknown, but the defensive grids now active around human worlds show energy signatures consistent with planet-killer weapons. If these are merely their defensive installations. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Every member of the council understood the implication. If humanity's defensive capabilities were this advanced, their offensive capabilities were probably beyond calculation. We need to understand their intentions, Vexandra declared. Are they preparing for conquest? Are they angry about how we've treated them? Why are they revealing themselves now? The answer came from Dr. Chen's continued transmissions from Kepler 442b. Her archaeological team had discovered additional archives that painted a picture of humanity's voluntary withdrawal from galactic leadership. The records showed human leaders 50,000 years ago making the conscious decision to step back and allow their protege species to develop independence. According to these records, Chen reported, humanity withdrew because they were tired of bearing the responsibility for galactic civilization. They wanted to give other species the chance to grow and mature without constant human guidance. The memory suppression was voluntary. They chose to forget their own history. The records showed the careful planning that had gone into humanity's withdrawal. Advanced AI systems had been left in place to monitor galactic development, ready to reactivate human infrastructure if threats emerged that the younger species couldn't handle. For 50,000 years, these systems had remained dormant, watching and waiting. But now something has triggered their reactivation protocols, Chen continued. Long-range sensors are detecting massive objects approaching from outside the galaxy. The AI systems classify them as an extinction-level threat that requires immediate Guardian response. The transmission included detailed sensor data showing the approaching entities. The objects were vast beyond comprehension, each one larger than most star systems, moving with obvious intelligence and purpose toward the galactic rim. Most disturbing of all, they were accelerating. Estimated time to galactic contact is 18 months, Chen reported. The Guardian protocols have classified this as a code black scenario, total galactic sterilization event. Humanity is awakening not by choice, but by necessity. Back on Trade Station Omega-7, the news of the approaching threat had shifted the entire dynamic of the confrontation. The revelation that humanity was revealing itself in response to an external threat that could destroy all galactic civilization put their actions in an entirely different context. Commander Crixval found himself in the impossible position of trying to maintain security protocols against a species that apparently possessed the technology to protect or destroy the entire galaxy. His enhanced screening procedures now seemed less like security measures and more like potential provocations against beings whose true capabilities were unknown. Sir, his aide whispered urgently, we're receiving a priority transmission from Dominion Command. All forces are ordered to maintain peaceful relations with human nationals until further notice. Around the plaza, the alien population was processing the same information that galactic leaders were grappling with. The humans they had dismissed as insignificant were revealing themselves as the ancient protectors of galactic civilization. The species they had treated with condescension were the same beings who had guided their ancestors from primitive planetary civilizations to galactic powers. Captain Martinez found himself at the center of attention as beings who had previously ignored him now approached with careful respect. A hegemony trade representative who had cheated him on grain prices the previous month now offered to renegotiate their contracts at significantly more favorable terms. I don't understand what's happening, Martinez said to Dr. Tanaka. Yesterday, I was nobody special. Today, aliens are treating me like I might conquer their star systems. Maybe because you could, she replied quietly, showing him new feeds from human space. Look at this. The images showed massive human installations coming online throughout the galaxy. Ancient factories were beginning production of technologies that made current galactic achievements look primitive. Defensive grids were activating around not just human worlds, but around the homeworlds of every major galactic civilization. They're protecting everyone, Dr. Tanaka whispered in amazement. The human installations aren't just defending human space. They're creating a defensive perimeter around the entire galaxy. The realization was spreading throughout the station as more news feeds confirmed the same pattern. Humanity wasn't revealing its capabilities for conquest or revenge. They were taking their old position as galactic guardians, preparing to defend civilizations that had forgotten their protection was needed. Ambassador Thelsera approached the group of humans with her full diplomatic escort. Her bearing had shifted from the careful neutrality of earlier to something approaching reverence. On behalf of the consortium, she said formally, I offer our apologies for any disrespect shown to your people. We did not understand your true nature or your sacrifice. Martinez looked around at his fellow humans, traders, researchers, and travelers who had accepted their place as minor players in galactic affairs. They were all ordinary people living ordinary lives, completely unaware that their species had once been the guardians of galactic civilization. We didn't know either, he said honestly. We're as surprised as you are. The ambassador's expression softened slightly. Perhaps that was the point, she said. According to the historical records, your ancestors wanted you to develop naturally, without the burden of your heritage. They wanted you to choose your own path. Around them, the station's population was beginning to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Humanity was awakening from a self-imposed amnesia to face a threat that could destroy everything they had helped build over 50 millennia. The question now was whether the galaxy's current civilizations would accept the return of their ancient guardians, or resist the awakening of powers beyond their understanding. The answer would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy, as the mysterious entities from the cosmic void continued their inexorable approach toward the galactic rim. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous debate for 72 hours. Representatives from every major civilization sat in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, the galactic capital that had served as the center of interstellar government for 8,000 years. The air recycling system struggled to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species, creating a complex atmosphere that somehow supported everyone while satisfying no one completely. Admiral Chun Wei, the newly appointed human representative, sat in a section that had been hastily added to accommodate Earth's unexpected elevation to major power status. Just 1 week ago, humanity hadn't even been considered significant enough to warrant a permanent council seat. Now they were being treated as potentially the most important voice in galactic affairs. Chun was a career military officer who had spent 20 years commanding human defense fleets in what everyone had believed was the protection of minor colonial worlds. The revelation that his ships had been operating alongside ancient automated systems that could have annihilated any threat without his knowledge was still difficult to process. The human delegation maintains that these revelations are as surprising to them as they are to us, declared Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrians, his crystalline formations pulsing with skeptical blue light. Yet we are asked to believe that they possessed no knowledge of technology that spans thousands of star systems. Chen stood to address the assembly, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. Ambassador Kethvar, I understand your skepticism. 3 days ago, I commanded what I believed was a small patrol fleet protecting farming colonies. I now discover that my ships were operating in coordination with defensive grids that could protect the entire galaxy. If this was deception, it was deception so complete that we deceived ourselves. Around the chamber, representatives from the galaxy's major powers struggled with the implications of what they were learning. The Dominion of Esikatar, whose military might had been the foundation of their political influence for millennia, found their greatest dreadnoughts rendered obsolete by defensive systems that had been operating undetected in their own territory. The merchant collective discovered that their most profitable trade routes had been secretly protected by human installations for decades. The question before us, announced Council Speaker Morgeth, is not how we were deceived, but how we proceed. The approaching entities from beyond our galaxy represent a threat that our current military capabilities cannot address. The main display activated, showing the latest sensor readings from the cosmic void. The mysterious objects had been designated as devourers by the ancient human AI systems, and the name seemed appropriate. Each entity was the size of a solar system, composed of materials that defied analysis, and moving with obvious intelligence toward the galactic rim. According to human projections, continued Morgeth. These entities will reach our outer territories in 14 months. Our combined fleets cannot hope to resist something of this magnitude. Admiral S.E. Kathara of the Zephyrian Defense Force spoke with barely controlled anger. So we are to accept human protection like children who cannot defend themselves? Are we to abandon 12,000 years of independence to serve under our former guardians? Chen stood again, his voice calm but firm. Admiral, humanity seeks no dominion over the galaxy. Our ancestors voluntarily stepped down from leadership because they wanted other species to develop independence. We have no desire to rule. Then, what do you desire? Demanded Representative Vexshal of the hegemony. The answer came from an unexpected source. The Chamber's communication system activated with a transmission from Dr. Sarah Chun, still working at the archaeological site on Kepler 442b. Her image appeared before the assembly, exhausted but determined. Honored representatives, she began. I have discovered additional archives that may answer your questions about human intentions. The display showed ancient recordings of human leaders from 50,000 years ago, debating the same issues now facing the Galactic Council. The images were remarkably clear, showing beings who looked entirely human despite the vast span of time. These records document the decision to withdraw from galactic leadership, Dr. Chen reported. The humans of that era were tired of making decisions for other species. They wanted their protege civilizations to develop their own cultures, their own solutions, their own destiny. The recordings showed emotional debates among human leaders. Some argued for maintaining their protective role, warning that withdrawing too soon could leave the galaxy vulnerable. Others insisted that continued human dominance would prevent other species from reaching their full potential. The final decision was to establish a monitoring system, Dr. Chen continued. Automated installations would remain active, but hidden, ready to respond only to threats that could not be handled by the galaxy's developing civilizations. For 50,000 years, these systems remained dormant because no such threat materialized. Admiral Chen Wei felt a strange sense of pride as he watched his ancient ancestors debating the same principles that had guided his own career. The humans in the recordings clearly possessed godlike power compared to the other species of their era, yet they chose to step back and allow those species to grow. The approaching entities have triggered full reactivation protocols, Dr. Chen's transmission continued. But the AI systems are not designed for conquest. They are designed for protection. Humanity is awakening not to reclaim dominance, but to fulfill the same guardian role our ancestors accepted, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The silence that followed was profound. Around the chamber, representatives of civilizations that had considered themselves the pinnacle of galactic achievement found themselves confronting the reality that they were still the protected children of an ancient guardian species. The first to speak was Chancellor Velmaran of the Synthesis Coalition, a confederation of scientific species who had built their civilization on the pursuit of knowledge. If humanity truly possesses the capability to defend against these entities, then our choice is simple, she said. We can maintain our pride and face extinction, or we can accept help and survive to continue our development. Her words sparked immediate controversy. Representatives from the more militaristic species objected to any arrangement that would place them under human protection, while the more pragmatic civilizations began calculating the benefits of alliance with beings who possess technology beyond their understanding. What guarantees do we have? Demanded Admiral Esikthra. How do we know that humans will not use this crisis to re-establish their ancient dominance permanently? Admiral Chun considered the question carefully. Around him, the political foundations of galactic civilization were shifting in real time. The hierarchies that had governed interspecies relations for millennia were collapsing as species that had considered themselves equals discovered they had been protected children all along. I cannot speak for all of humanity, he said finally. But I can tell you what I have observed in the past week. Our installations are not just protecting human worlds, they are protecting your worlds too. Our defensive grids cover Zephyrian space, Dominion territory, hegemony systems, and every other civilization in this chamber. He gestured toward the tactical displays showing the expanding network of human defensive positions. The pattern was clear. Humanity was creating a protective shell around the entire galaxy, not just their own territory. We could have activated these systems in secret, Chen continued. We could have defended ourselves while leaving the rest of the galaxy to face the approaching threat alone. Instead, we revealed ourselves and offered protection to everyone. The truth of his words was undeniable. Human installations were appearing in neutral space, around alien homeworlds, and along contested borders. If humanity intended conquest, they were going about it in the strangest possible way, by defending their potential victims. Representative Korth of the Trade Federation, a species known for their practical approach to galactic affairs, stood to address the assembly. The economic implications alone make cooperation necessary, he said bluntly. Human technology could solve resource scarcity, energy limitations, and transportation problems that have constrained galactic development for millennia. Whatever our concerns about independence, we cannot afford to reject such opportunities. His statement opened a new dimension to the debate. The technology being revealed in human space wasn't just military. It included manufacturing capabilities that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Replicators that could produce any material at the atomic level, energy systems that could power entire star systems indefinitely, and transportation networks that could connect every inhabited world in the galaxy. The question, said Council Speaker Morgeth, is whether we can accept human assistance without compromising our own development. The answer came from Admiral Chun, drawing on military principles that apparently transcended species boundaries. In my experience, he said, the best leaders are those who prepare others to replace them. If humanity truly learned from their ancient mistakes, they will not seek to rule, but to teach. They will not create dependence, but independence. As the debate continued, reports from across the galaxy painted a picture of humanity struggling with their own awakening. Human populations who had believed themselves to be young colonists were discovering that their new homes sat atop installations that could reshape solar systems. Human scientists found themselves with access to technologies that made their previous achievements look primitive. Human military officers realized their forces were integrated with defensive networks beyond their previous imagination. On Earth, the revelation of humanity's true nature had created its own crisis. President Catherine Walsh found herself dealing with a population that was simultaneously terrified and amazed by their species' hidden heritage. Ancient bunkers were opening worldwide, revealing technologies that challenged everything humans thought they knew about their own capabilities. The psychological impact cannot be understated, reported Dr. James Patterson, the government's chief psychologist. We're asking people to accept that everything they believed about human history is wrong. We're asking them to embrace a heritage of cosmic responsibility that most of them never wanted. The president stared at displays showing human installations across the galaxy activating in response to the approaching threat. Each activation represented technologies and capabilities that could benefit or destroy galactic civilization. What about the people who want nothing to do with this heritage? She asked. What about humans who just want to live normal lives? Dr. Patterson smiled sadly. According to the historical records, that's exactly why our ancestors chose to forget. They were tired of cosmic responsibility. They wanted their descendants to have the choice of a normal life. And now that choice is being taken away by circumstances beyond our control. The approaching entities had accelerated again, their estimated arrival time reduced to 13 months. Long-range sensors showed them beginning to deploy smaller craft, still massive by galactic standards, that appeared to be scouting formations. Back in the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the debate was reaching a critical point. The galaxy's civilizations faced a choice that would define their future: accept human protection and risk losing their independence, or maintain their pride and face potential extinction. The decision came from an unexpected source. Junior Representative Lithera of the Frontier Colonies, a small confederation of worlds on the galactic rim, stood to address the assembly. I speak for the small civilizations, she said, her voice carrying the weight of desperation. We have no mighty fleets, no advanced technology, no power to protect ourselves. For us, the choice is simple: accept human guardianship or die. Her words resonated through the chamber because they reflected the reality that most species faced. Only the major powers had the luxury of debating independence versus survival. For the smaller civilizations, humanity's awakening was literally the difference between life and death. Admiral Chun felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. Around the galaxy, billions of beings were looking to humanity for protection against a threat they couldn't comprehend. It was the same burden his ancestors had carried 50,000 years ago, and the same burden they had grown tired of bearing. The vote that followed would determine whether galactic civilization would face the approaching darkness united under human protection or divided and vulnerable to extinction. As the representatives cast their decisions, Admiral Chen wondered if humanity was ready to shoulder the weight of cosmic guardianship once again. The first engagement with the Devourers came not at the galactic rim as expected, but in the Andromeda Relay, a neutral zone between galaxies that housed one of the galaxy's most important scientific research stations. Dr. Yenna Kolseth had been studying dark matter fluctuations at the facility when her sensors detected something that shouldn't have been possible. Station Commander, we have massive spatial distortions approaching from Vector 77 Mark III, she reported, her voice tight with controlled panic. Whatever it is, it's bigger than anything in our database. Commander Sarn Velthek rushed to the sensor station, his Zephyrian crystals flickering with alarm as he reviewed the readings. The object approaching their position defied every law of physics he understood. It was simultaneously solid matter and pure energy, existing in normal space, while somehow extending into dimensions that their sensors couldn't properly analyze. How big? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. Approximately 40 billion kilometers in diameter, Dr. Kolseth replied, her voice barely audible. And it's accelerating directly toward our position. The Andromeda Relay Station housed representatives from every major galactic civilization, making it essentially a miniature version of galactic society itself. The news of the approaching entity sent panic through the research teams as they realized they were about to become the first beings to face humanity's ancient enemy. Commander Velthek activated the emergency communication system. This is Andromeda Relay Station calling all ships. We have a code black emergency. Repeat, this is code black. We need immediate evacuation assistance. The response came faster than anyone expected. Andromeda Relay. This is Admiral Chun Wei aboard the UES Prometheus. We are 3 hours out with a full escort fleet. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Dr. Kolseth stared at her commander in surprise. 3 hours ago, the nearest human ship had been 2 days away. Either the humans had been much closer than anyone knew, or they possessed faster-than-light technology that exceeded anything the galactic community had imagined. Commander, she said urgently, I'm reading massive energy signatures materializing throughout the system. Something is creating artificial hyperspace corridors. The answer appeared on their main viewer as space itself seemed to tear open in a dozen places simultaneously. Through each rift came ships unlike anything in the galactic databases, sleek vessels that seemed to be built from crystallized light itself, moving with impossible grace and speed. The human rescue fleet that emerged was clearly not built with current galactic technology. The ships showed no visible engines, no obvious weapons, yet sensors indicated power outputs that exceeded entire star systems. Most impossibly, the fleet numbered in the thousands, far more ships than humanity was supposed to possess. How many ships do humans have? Whispered Dr. Kolseth. Commander Velthek was reading the tactical displays with growing amazement. According to these scans, we're looking at manufacturing capabilities that could produce entire fleets in a matter of hours. The evacuation began with an efficiency that left the station's inhabitants stunned. Human ships appeared alongside the station with perfect precision, their crews speaking flawless translations of dozens of galactic languages. The evacuation procedures showed an understanding of alien biology and psychology that suggested extensive experience with interspecies operations. Captain Sarah Kim, commanding one of the evacuation vessels, boarded the station to coordinate the rescue personally. The aliens she encountered stared at her with a mixture of awe and fear that she found deeply uncomfortable. Captain, said Dr. Kolseth, approaching with obvious nervousness. Your ships? How long have they existed? Kim paused, consulting her newly activated command interface that somehow contained information about technologies she had never seen before. According to our records, These particular vessels were constructed approximately 30,000 years ago. They've been maintained by automated systems ever since. The revelation sent shockwaves through the station. Humanity possessed a fleet that had been maintained in secret for 30 millennia, ready to respond to threats that the galactic community couldn't even detect. As the evacuation continued, the approaching Devourer entity came within sensor range of the human fleet. The readings that followed challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about the limits of technology and destructive capability. Entity analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the Prometheus's bridge. The object appears to be a constructed intelligence of unknown origin. Mass equivalent to approximately 4,000 solar masses, composed primarily of exotic matter that exists partially outside normal spacetime. Admiral Chun Wei reviewed the analysis with growing concern. Even with humanity's ancient technology, this entity represented a threat beyond anything they had previously encountered. Defensive capabilities? He asked. Unknown, but energy readings suggest it could sterilize entire solar systems with minimal effort. Our historical databases classify it as a Class Omega threat, extinction level. Around the fleet, similar analyses were reaching the same conclusion. The Devourers were not merely advanced aliens or hostile civilizations. They were something far worse. Cosmic predators that consumed entire galaxies for reasons that defied understanding. Sir, reported the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the entity. The message that followed came not as words or images, but as pure information directly inserted into their consciousness. Every being in the fleet, human and alien alike, suddenly understood the nature of their enemy with terrifying clarity. The Devourers were ancient beyond measure, survivors from the previous universe that had existed before the Big Bang. They had witnessed the death of their own reality and had somehow managed to survive the transition into the current universe. For billions of years, they had wandered the cosmic void between galaxies, consuming any life they encountered to sustain their continued existence. They see all biological life as food, Admiral Chen realized, sharing the information with his fleet. They don't understand concepts like civilization, culture, or individual identity. To them, we're just energy sources to be harvested. The entity's message continued, explaining in cold, logical terms why resistance was futile. It had consumed hundreds of galaxies over billions of years. No civilization had ever successfully opposed it. The current galaxy would be harvested efficiently, and all resistance would be eliminated. But there was something else in the message: confusion. The entity had expected to find the galaxy defended by primitive civilizations easy to harvest. Instead, it was encountering technology and defensive capabilities that it didn't recognize. It doesn't understand what humanity is, Dr. Colseth realized, monitoring the exchange from her evacuation ship. It's never encountered a species that voluntarily reduced their technological footprint. Admiral Chun smiled grimly. Then, it's about to learn why our ancestors were tired of being galactic guardians. The first battle began when the Devourer entity deployed its harvesting systems, massive constructs that began converting matter and energy on a planetary scale. The human fleet responded with weapons that had been sleeping for 50,000 years. The engagement that followed lit up the cosmic void with energies that could be observed from neighboring galaxies. Human ships fired coherent streams of reality-altering particles that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. The Devourer responded with weapons that could collapse spacetime itself. Admiral, reported Commander Rodriguez, conventional weapons are having minimal effect. The entity's exotic matter composition makes it highly resistant to normal attacks. Then, we stop using normal attacks, Chen replied. He activated communication systems that connected him directly to the ancient AI networks managing humanity's hidden infrastructure. This is Admiral Chun Wei requesting activation of Guardian Protocol 7. The response was immediate. Across human space, installations that had been hidden for millennia began revealing their true purpose. Weapons platforms that could harness the energy output of entire stars came online. Manufacturing facilities began producing munitions that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Most significantly, The AI networks began awakening capabilities that had been deliberately suppressed for 50,000 years. Humanity's ancestors had possessed technology that could reshape reality on a cosmic scale, and they had chosen to lock it away because the temptation to use such power was too great. Guardian Protocol 7 authorized, came the AI response. Warning: activation of reality manipulation systems carries significant risks to local space-time stability. Admiral Chun felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders. The decision to activate humanity's most dangerous weapons wasn't just about defeating the Devourer. It was about accepting that his species would once again become the guardians of galactic civilization, with all the burdens that role entailed. Activate all systems, he ordered. The galaxy's survival depends on it. Across the battle zone, human ships began transforming as their ancient systems came fully online. Vessels that had appeared advanced now revealed themselves as barely scratching the surface of human capabilities. The fleet expanded as ships emerged from hidden dimensions where they had waited for millennia. Most disturbing of all, some vessels began operating with what appeared to be weaponized laws of physics, attacks that could alter causality itself. The Devourer entity, which had confidently expected to harvest another primitive galaxy, found itself facing opposition that challenged its very understanding of reality. For the first time in billions of years, it encountered weapons that could actually threaten its existence. But the entity was not alone. As the battle intensified, long-range sensors detected dozens more Devourers emerging from the cosmic void, drawn by the unexpected resistance. Humanity's ancient enemy had arrived not as a single entity, but as an invasion force that had come to harvest the entire galaxy. The evacuation of Andromeda Relay Station was completed as the battle reached its climax, but the real war was just beginning. Across the galaxy, other human installations were coming online, revealing the true scope of humanity's hidden infrastructure. Ancient factories began producing weapons of cosmic destruction, while defensive grids spanning entire star clusters prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. Admiral Chen looked at the tactical displays showing dozens of Devourer entities approaching from different vectors. Each one was capable of destroying entire civilizations, and they were coordinating their attack with intelligence that suggested millions of years of experience. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet, prepare for extended operations. We're not just fighting for our own survival, we're fighting for every living being in the galaxy. As the human fleet moved to intercept the next wave of Devourers, the galaxy's civilizations watched in awe and terror. The beings they had dismissed as minor newcomers were revealing themselves as possessors of technology that could literally reshape reality. The question now was whether even humanity's ancient power would be sufficient to protect the galaxy against enemies that had devoured entire universes. The final battle for galactic survival began not with grand strategies or dramatic speeches, but with a simple message transmitted across every inhabited world simultaneously. The voice belonged to Dr. Sarah Chun, still working at the archaeological site on Kepler 442b, where she had become the primary interface between humanity's ancient AI systems and their awakening civilization. People of the galaxy, her message began, what you are about to witness will determine whether our civilization survive to see another dawn. Humanity's ancient systems have detected 47 Devourer entities converging on our galaxy. Each one is capable of consuming entire star systems. Our only hope lies in weapons and technologies that were deliberately hidden because of their terrible power. Across human space, the true magnitude of their ancient heritage was finally being revealed. Cities that had been built on supposedly empty worlds discovered they sat atop installations that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Farmers found their agricultural colonies housed manufacturing facilities that could produce fleets of starships. Most shocking of all, Earth itself revealed installations that could harness the energy output of the galactic core. President Catherine Walsh stood in a command center that had materialized beneath the United Nations building, watching displays that showed humanity's true capabilities. The room felt ancient despite its advanced technology, as if it had been waiting for 50,000 years for humans to rediscover it. According to the AI systems, reported General Morrison, We have approximately 600 major installations across the galaxy, with supporting infrastructure that includes over 10,000 defensive platforms and manufacturing facilities. The numbers were staggering, but what truly amazed Walsh was the scope of the technology involved. Human installations weren't just protecting human worlds. They had created a defensive perimeter that encompassed the entire galaxy. Ancient automated systems had been quietly maintaining and expanding these defenses for millennia, preparing for a threat that galactic civilization couldn't even imagine. "What about our allies?" she asked. "The other galactic civilizations?" General Morrison's expression was complicated. "That's where it gets interesting, Madam President. Our ancestors didn't just build defenses. They built integration protocols. Every major galactic civilization has defensive systems that can interface with ours, even though they don't know it." The revelation that followed was perhaps the most shocking of all. When human installations began their full activation, similar systems awakened throughout alien space. The Zephyrian homeworld discovered that their crystalline cities had been built with defensive capabilities that exceeded their understanding. Dominion battle stations found themselves equipped with weapons that had been dormant for millennia. Even the smallest civilizations discovered that their worlds contained technologies that had been quietly protecting them for thousands of years. Ambassador Kethvar stood in the Zephyrian Council chamber, staring at holographic displays that showed his homeworld's true defensive capabilities. Ancient human technology had been integrated so seamlessly into Zephyrian infrastructure that they had never detected it. "How is this possible?" he asked the human liaison officer who had been assigned to explain the revelations. Commander Lisa Park, formerly a routine diplomatic attaché who had discovered she was actually the interface for advanced AI systems, smiled sadly. "Our ancestors didn't want to rule the galaxy, but they also couldn't bear to leave it defenseless. They built integrated systems that would protect everyone while allowing each species to believe they were responsible for their own security." The implications were staggering. For 50,000 years, humanity's hidden systems had been quietly preventing wars, deflecting cosmic threats, and maintaining galactic stability while allowing other species to take credit for their own survival. "You've been protecting us all along," Kethvar realized, his crystals flickering with complex emotions. Every major disaster that mysteriously resolved itself, every war that ended before it could spread, every cosmic threat that simply disappeared. "Our ancestors called it the Guardian Protocol," Commander Park explained. "Protect without ruling, guide without controlling, help without being seen." It worked for 50 millennia, until something came along that required visible intervention. The Devourers had spread throughout the galaxy like a cosmic plague, each entity beginning the systematic conversion of matter and energy into forms they could consume. Their harvesting process was horrifyingly efficient. Entire worlds were being reduced to exotic matter that existed partially outside normal spacetime. But humanity's response was equally systematic. Ancient installations that had slept for millennia awakened with purpose and coordination that suggested they had been planning this defense for ages. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas engaged enemies that existed beyond normal reality. Manufacturing systems began producing munitions that could damage beings from the previous universe. Admiral Chun Wei found himself commanding not just humanity's hidden fleet, but an integrated defense network that included every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. Alien ships that had been equipped with dormant human technology suddenly found themselves with capabilities that exceeded their wildest dreams. "Admiral," reported Captain Rodriguez, "the Zephyrian fleet has just activated quantum displacement weapons they didn't know they possessed. The Dominion forces are using reality anchors that make their positions immune to space-time manipulation. Even the smallest civilian vessels are showing defensive capabilities that rival our current military hardware." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Humanity's ancient enemies found themselves facing not just one awakened guardian species, but an entire galaxy that had been quietly prepared for this moment over 50 millennia. Every world they attempted to harvest was protected by defenses they couldn't understand. Every fleet they engaged possessed weapons that could threaten their exotic matter composition. The Devourers began to realize they were not facing a primitive galaxy ripe for harvesting, but a carefully prepared trap that had been waiting for their arrival. "They're trying to retreat," reported Dr. Chun from Kepler 442b, monitoring the battle through the ancient AI networks. Long-range sensors show several entities attempting to withdraw to the cosmic void. The response from Admiral Chun was immediate. "Not acceptable. If even one entity escapes, they could return with reinforcements we can't imagine. This ends here." The final phase of the battle saw humanity's most terrible weapons finally unleashed. Technologies that could collapse entire dimensions were activated. Weapons that could alter the flow of time itself engaged enemies that existed beyond normal causality. Most devastating of all, reality manipulation systems that could rewrite the fundamental constants of physics began targeting the Devourer's exotic matter composition. The battle's conclusion came not with explosions or dramatic last stands, but with something far more profound. The Devourers, beings that had survived the death of the previous universe, found their exotic matter composition being systematically converted back into normal spacetime. Humanity's weapons weren't just destroying them. They were forcing them to exist according to the laws of physics they had transcended billions of years ago. One by one, the cosmic predators that had devoured countless galaxies found themselves subject to mortality for the first time since their original universe had died. As their exotic matter shells collapsed, the energy they had accumulated from consuming entire civilizations was released in controlled bursts that actually strengthened the galaxy's defensive grid. The last Devourer entity transmitted a final message before its forced conversion to normal matter was completed. The communication carried a note of something that might have been respect. "Guardian species," it said, its voice carrying the weight of cosmic ages. "We understand now why your galaxy was never harvested during our previous passages. You are the children of the builders who prepared for our return. We acknowledge your victory and your right to exist." With those words, the last survivor of the previous universe dissolved into energy that was immediately absorbed by humanity's ancient systems, adding its accumulated knowledge to the defensive networks that would protect the galaxy for generations to come. The silence that followed the battle's end was profound. Across the galaxy, billions of beings tried to process what they had just witnessed. The humans they had known as junior partners in galactic civilization had revealed themselves as the ancient guardians who had shaped every aspect of their development. President Walsh received reports from across human space as their people struggled to understand their true heritage. Ancient installations continued revealing new capabilities, technologies for healing worlds damaged by the Devourer attacks, manufacturing systems that could provide abundance for every galactic civilization, and, most remarkably, educational networks that had been preserving the knowledge of countless extinct species. According to the AI reports, General Morrison told her, "Our ancestors didn't just protect the galaxy. They preserved it. Every species that ever achieved spaceflight has had their knowledge and culture archived in our systems. We're the custodians of 50,000 years of galactic history." The responsibility was overwhelming. But as Walsh watched the displays showing humanity's installations already beginning repair and reconstruction efforts across the galaxy, she understood that this was what her species had been meant for. Not conquest or domination, but guardianship and protection. The aftermath of the battle saw fundamental changes in galactic civilization. The hidden integration of human technology into alien infrastructure meant that cooperation was no longer optional. Every species now possessed capabilities that required coordination with humanity's ancient systems. But, rather than creating resentment, this revelation led to an unprecedented era of collaboration. Species that had maintained their independence for millennia found themselves working together on projects that none of them could have imagined alone. The Zephyrians used their crystalline biology to interface with human quantum systems. The Dominion's military organization helped coordinate defensive strategies across thousands of worlds. The merchant collectives found their trade networks enhanced by manufacturing capabilities that could provide abundance without scarcity. Admiral Chen Wei, now designated as Supreme Guardian of Galactic Defense, established headquarters on Nexus Prime, where representatives from every known civilization worked to understand and maintain their integrated defensive systems. The title felt strange, but the responsibility was familiar. Humanity had simply returned to a role their ancestors had filled for countless millennia. The question now, he told the assembled representatives, is what kind of galaxy we want to build. Our ancestors chose to withdraw because they were tired of making decisions for other species. We've been forced to return, but we don't have to repeat their mistakes. The response came from Ambassador Thelsera of the Consortium, speaking for the scientific civilizations. We propose a new model, shared guardianship. Humanity provides the protective infrastructure, but governance remains with each individual civilization. Protection without domination, cooperation without submission. The model that emerged from these discussions became known as the Galactic Compact, an agreement that recognized humanity's role as protective guardians while maintaining the independence and sovereignty of every galactic civilization. Ancient human technology would protect and serve, but not rule. Dr. Sarah Chun, still at the archaeological site that had started it all, made one final discovery that put everything in perspective. Deep in the ancient archives, she found records of humanity's original emergence as a spacefaring species. The documents showed that they too had once been protected by an even more ancient guardian species, beings who had vanished into cosmic history after ensuring that humanity was ready to take their place. It's a cycle, she reported to the Galactic Council. Guardians emerge, protect the galaxy, grow tired of the responsibility, and eventually step back to allow their protégés to take over. Our ancestors weren't the first guardians. They inherited the role from an earlier species that had done the same thing. The revelation that galactic guardianship was a continuing cycle, passed from species to species across cosmic ages, gave new meaning to humanity's awakening. They weren't just returning to an old role. They were continuing an ancient tradition that ensured the galaxy would always have protectors when they were needed. As human installations across the galaxy settled into their protective role, Admiral Chun looked out at the stars and wondered what species would eventually inherit the guardian role from humanity. The cycle would continue, but for now, the galaxy was safe, and every civilization within it could continue to grow, learn, and reach toward their own cosmic destiny. Humanity had awakened as the ancient guardians, and the galaxy, surprised, grateful, and forever changed, could face the future knowing that some things were worth protecting across any span of time.